Hi.
Hi, Connie.
Hey, good evening. And we have with us Dimitri. Hi, Dimitri.
Hello. Hello, Tommy. Hello.
Hi. Nice to meet you. I don't think I've met you before, though, Dimitri.
What was that? Sorry.
I don't think I've met you before, have I?
No. I'm pretty new to the CPS.
Ah,
Did it a couple of months ago. This is my first meeting or anything, so I'm really looking forward to this meeting
okay.
today.
Well, I'm just starting to get set up here. Tell me about yourself.
Yes, sure. So, can you hear me well?
Yes, you're a little bit fuzzy. Do you have a headset?
I'm trying to improve that. Oh, that's terrible. Hang on. Um,
Well, while you're finding that, Dimitri, let me introduce you to Piero. Piero is our director of the CPS.
Hello, Piero.
Oopsie. And he's going away for
He's leaving. That's okay.
And
Yeah.
we have Miwash. Nice to meet you too. Dimitri was just about to, yeah, hello. Dimitri is just about to tell us a little bit about himself when he comes back.
Yes, sir. And
That's
so I
okay.
live in Australia. I'm an astrophysicist. I got my PhD in astrophysics. I moved to cultural astronomy, so I work as a cultural astronomer at Western Sydney University as an adjunct fellow, and I own several stargazing businesses on
Huh.
the east coast of Australia, in the Blue Mountains and in Jervis Bay. And I've created the Blue Mountains Dark Sky Initiative to create a dark sky reserve in the Blue Mountains.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Thank you. And yes, and now I'm very concerned about the issue of satellites, especially I find maybe an issue that's underrepresented as far as I can tell so far is just sky brightening and whole sky brightening. Yeah, I would love to be able to improve the issue of space light pollution as far as stargazing is impacted, and access to the sky for citizens, for indigenous cultures, for all of that. So um, yeah, that's one of the reasons why I joined the CPS, and all the other reasons, astronomical reasons as well, that I feel I'm very concerned about whole sky brightening and losing access to the sky.
Well, there'll be a lot of talk about that tonight, and you'll meet one of the two co-leads for the community engagement group, which was involved themselves in indigenous communities, excuse me, and have lots of knowledge about that. So yeah. So do you work with Dwayne? Are you going to be part of the?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Dwayne's
Okay.
in Melbourne, and I'm in Sydney. I'm working in Dwayne's footsteps essentially, but we're good friends. Yes.
Okay. You do you know about the Indigenous Communities and Astronomy Symposium, IAU Symposium this July, I
Yes,
think
I'm
it
part of
is?
the local organizing committee.
I should have had to ask. I could have guessed. Very, very good.
I really look forward to it. And yes, cultural astronomy in the space age is the theme. So yes, I think we will need, if not presence from the CPS, good arguments and good representation from the CPS, which of course I'm happy to do my bit if that's ever
Well,
necessary.
that's excellent. I'm just going to do a couple of things here, but meanwhile, hello, Brad, and then Aaron, and then Miwash. And Miwash, I don't know where you're from, but maybe you can introduce yourself. Perhaps I pronounced the name incorrectly. Miwish? That's okay. Well, Aaron, it's nice to see you here. I'm glad because did you decide whether or not you are going to be participating in the second town hall?
I can make it in the morning. So I haven't had a chance to write. It's been nonstop for me today, but yes, I can make it, and so I'll see you then too.
Okay, all right. And we have slides for you if you haven't seen them already. So, and
No,
Brad,
I added to the
so go ahead.
slides. Yep.
Okay, good. I'm so glad. That's wonderful. Brad, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Okay, good. And John's here.
Hello.
Okay. Hi. Well, okay. Let's hope there's a few more people in a few minutes. I'm going to look for an email. I'll be right back with you guys. Did you want to test anything or go over anything, Piero?
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. So I see that you're already sharing the screen, right?
Yeah, I think it's stable right now.
Okay,
I
fine.
really did have my computer, those lines that go across the computer, they totally flaked out today, and it flaked out a few days ago, so I was kind of apprehensive about
No
that.
problem. If you have a problem, I'm here to back up.
Thank
I'm
you.
ready
Appreciate that.
to share mine. No problem.
Okay, thank
And
you.
I'll be happy to do that this afternoon, my afternoon.
Your afternoon. Yes. Okay. Mhm. Okay. So hopefully Frederick will be on soon. Okay. So everything's ready, I think. And where does it want me to change slides here? Let's see. Oh, good. Okay. All right. So I have to convey that we are going to be recorded for the interest of people who are not able to come tonight. Okay. And that's, I hope that's a decision that's okay with everybody. But so it's actually recording at the moment right now, because I always forget to begin, and so I put it automatically. Anyways, so Dimitri, you'll learn all about us tonight. I won't go into anything right now, but Aaron's going to be one of the speakers, and Pierre's going to start us off, and soon we'll have hopefully 3 other speakers with us. And also John's talking as well tonight. Yeah. Okay, it is 10 o'clock. Oh my goodness.
Well, I'll give some few more minutes to.
So John, I would like to introduce you to Dimitri, but while we're waiting, and Dimitri is in Australia. He does know Dwayne, the guy who's organizing with his local his scientific committee and the local committee, the Indigenous Communities and Astronomy Conference in July, and that's exactly what Dimitri works on. So I think the two of you might like to talk with each other at some point in the near future.
Dimitri, are you in Queensland?
John, I'm in New South Wales. I live in Jervis Bay, but I evolve around Sydney, Blue Mountains, Jervis Bay. Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. Very good. It's good to meet you, and I look forward to talking to you.
Likewise, John. Thank you.
Okay, let me see if I've heard anything from nothing yet. So Okay, so if he is unable to come, I'm very prepared to do the slides, the few slides that I have here at the beginning after you, Piero. So.
Yep.
Mhm. So, Aaron, are you going to the UN?
Yes, I'll be there the second week. Looking forward to it.
Good.
And then my graduate student, Ewan Wright, will be there for the first week. So we're just kind of split things there. We've asked to speak on agenda items 10 and 15. So we have the long-term sustainability of outer space, and then also the dark and quiet skies.
Mhm.
And you saw the conference room, or sorry, not the conference room, the statement that we were planning to make was sent to you, but although there's a lot going on, so I don't know if you noticed it.
Yes, I'm sorry. I had quite a few
We're-
internal reports lately, so I've been working
We're
on that
all slammed.
too.
We're all slammed. It was just for
Yeah. Mhm.
information sharing.
Yeah. Thank you. I'll go look for that if I haven't seen it already. Yeah, I appreciate that. Okie dokie. Nothing from our fearless co-leader. So I don't know if you want to get started. It's almost 4 past. Do you want to wait another minute?
Yeah. Okay.
Piero?
That's just 1 minute per. So we do 6 or 5.
Connie, may I kindly request that you close and then reopen the slides? I just made a couple of edits.
Okay, that will give people a few more minutes. I will be happy to do that. No problem. Let me stop sharing here if I can. Okay. And it's going. Uh-oh. That killed my entire presentation. So for some reason, let me try to find it again. Oh, there it is. Yep. Okay. It's snuck behind another window. Okay. Okay. Share this. I'm assuming you can all see this, right?
Yeah.
Very good. Okay. I'm ready when you are.
Okay, Connie, I think we can start.
Yeah. There are 2 messages in the chat before we start.
Okay, so
Okay.
yeah, there's
Nope.
still one coming more. Okay, let's start with just a introduction and a welcome. So, dear all, welcome to the first town hall meeting of the entire community of the CPS affiliated members. This is the first session of this event. We will have a second one later in the day, just to cover the large geographical distribution of all of you. And first of all, I wish to thank you for the generous offer to collaborate with the CPS in pursuing its mission of protecting the dark and quiet sky from the interference of large satellite constellations. Our center, the CPS, is a coordinating center that relies on the efforts of people like you who share the concern of preserving the science of astronomy and the pristine appearance of the night sky. And thanks to the enthusiastic contribution of several of you, The CPS, in its 3 years of existence, has achieved important goals, from the understanding and scientific characterization of the satellite interference, both in optical infrared and radio, to the study and implementation of mitigating measures in close collaboration with the space industry and the constellation companies. The Center has also reviewed the existing national and international policies about orbital light pollution and produced brochures and video tutorials to inform society about the epochal change in the use of low orbit outer space. More details about this achievement will be given momentarily by the co-leaders of the 4 areas or hubs of the CPS activity. The question is, did the CPS complete its mission after 3 years of activity? The answer is a clear no. On one side, the rapid evolution of the diverse constellation deployment is posing new challenges to the mitigating effort. The somehow unexpected interference of the unintended electromagnetic radiation and the potential, still poorly understood and studied, contamination of the upper atmosphere by the constant re-entry of inoperative satellites are just a couple of examples of new emerging issues that require attention. Moreover, the most promising and mitigating measures, which have been proposed and experimented in collaboration with the constellation companies, are still at the prototype level of implementation. A substantial financial and in-kind effort will be needed to move from a prototype to a service offered to any interested observer. The IAU and the CPS partners, Noir Lab and SKO, are well aware of the issue and are considering it in the current revision of the CPS Memorandum of Understanding, whose renewal is due next April. In particular, the IAU has recently appointed a full-time professional fundraiser who will be instrumental in exploring possible fundings. In the meantime, the CPS can make substantial progress in some areas by more efficiently using the collaborative offer that you, the affiliated members, made. You are now a large community. Can you advance, Connie, to the third slide, please?
I didn't. Okay, my bad. Yes, sure.
Yes, just the geographical distribution, the previous slide.
Mm-hmm.
So you may not know that you're now a large community of more than 400 individuals, which are equally spread around the globe, with a diverse expertise and time availability, although united by the common concern of protecting the dark and quiet sky. Many of you are already effectively contributing to the hub's activity, but the potential for expanding the collaboration is substantial. The path to a more effective collaboration stems from a better communication and interactive opportunities with the affiliated members, and we are happy to inform you about some initiatives to achieve the above goals. The first and most obvious is this general toll meetings, which we intend to repeat at suitable intervals, possibly staggered with more focused hubs meetings open to all the interested members. These are the top-level opportunities to inform you and exchange views interactively about the progress of the CPS activities and about specific opportunities to contribute to them. A second important initiative is a quarterly CPS newsletter, the first issues of which will be published in a couple of weeks. The newsletter will primarily target the affiliated members, but hopefully be helpful to any interested reader. The published issue of the newsletter will be available on the CPS website. And the newsletter will also be a natural communication channel for informing members about projects and activities that are particularly suitable for collaborative effort. I leave it to my colleagues to be more specific about this aspect, but I can already mention that For example, translating part of the CPS documentation, such as brochures or video tutorials, into the main world languages will be a valuable contribution to raise public awareness of what is happening in our skies. I hope you will find this initiative interesting, and we are eager to hear about your comments and suggestions to improve them. And before I leave the floor to my colleagues, who will be describing in more detail the recent CPS activities, I'll be happy to answer any question you may have.
Questions for Piero? Dimitri?
It's all good so far. Thank you. I'll just keep listening.
Thank you, Dimitri. Okay. So I'm just going to give a very, very short overview. It's only about 5 slides long. And I'll just introduce myself briefly to you, Dimitri. My name is Connie Walker, and I'm one of the co-directors here. Piero's the director, and myself and Federico De Bruno, who hopefully will be joining us, is the other co-director. And I'll introduce you to each of the speakers who are actually the people here who are the co-leads on 3 of the 4 hubs that are part of CPS. So just to introduce you to the subject matter a little bit, 2 main challenges characterize the impact of satellite constellations on astronomy. And the first challenge is the exponential growth in the number of satellites in recent years, especially for commercial satellites in low Earth orbit. And we're going to call that LEO. This number has increased more than 5-fold in as many years. And about 12,000 of those are active and inactive satellites in LEO. The International Telecommunication Union, which is actually part of the UN, has regulatory filings for about 1.7 million LEO satellites. However, realistically, we're looking probably at between 100 and 200,000 satellites that may get launched in the near future. And that's still a very, very large number that's going to be impacting our dark and quiet skies. So concerns relating to the surge in satellites in LEO are multifold. There's a growing need for space traffic management, and another well-known issue is the uncontrollable space debris. And less known problems are the effects of satellites on astronomy, on which we in the CPS focus. And in general, satellites cause bright streaks in optical observations, which will be talked about more, and they also emit unintended radio frequency. You'll hear a little bit about that as well. So it is expected that the increase in the number of satellites in the night sky will cause an increase in sky brightness, as you were alluding to, Dimitri. Cultures and indigenous peoples' practice of sky traditions will be affected by the increase of this sky brightness. The dark starry night sky, as part of our cultural heritage, is something that we have enjoyed as a species for a millennia or more, and for many millennia, and until over about little over 100 years ago, when they had the advent of streetlights. And the sheer enjoyment of a dark and starry night sky will diminish with the increase in the numbers of satellites and ground-based light pollution. But today we're going to be talking, and we're going to be focusing on the impact of satellite constellations on astronomy in particular, and on mitigation solutions being carried out and considered. For optical astronomy, a satellite streak makes a small part of an image unusable. And if it's very bright, it may actually distort other areas of the image too, producing artifacts. This impacts several sciences or science cases that include things like the loss of orbit recovery for potentially hazardous asteroids, the loss of time series for variable stars, confusion with subtle distortions in the shape of distant galaxies by something called dark matter weak lensing, and also for spectroscopy, the contamination of faint objects in spectroscopic measurements that is actually done by, this contamination is done by reflected sunlight. And for radio astronomy, satellite telecom downlink signal can interfere with sensitive radio astronomy receiver systems. And this impacts several science cases, including the studies of galaxy evolution over cosmic time, where satellite interference makes it hard to detect mission lines, and also studies of cosmic microwave background, where satellite interference adds to the background confusion. This won't advance. Okay, so the CPS is a center under the jurisdiction of the International Astronomical Union. It is hosted by Noir Lab, which is a funny name for the actual US National Observatory, Astronomical Observatory in the United States. And then also it's co-led by, or co-hosted by SKAO, which is a pretty well-renowned network of radio telescopes in Australia, where you are, and in South Africa. And the three of us in the management team represent those three institutions, and Piero Benvenuti, whom you've met, and Federico De Bruno, and myself. And we have a steering committee, an advisory committee, and an executive committee at the IAU that we report to. So let me just briefly introduce you to our hubs. And after one more slide, hand over the proverbial microphone, basically, to one of our hub leads. We'll start telling you about their hub in a little more detail. And so Sat Hub is actually the first hub you're going to be hearing about, and it's focused on satellite observation, software development, and data analysis to understand the problem and find mitigations. And the next up you're going to hear from is, and that's going to be, tonight's going to be, the Sat Hub's going to be, slides are going to be given by Meredith Rawls, and she's from the University of Washington, and also works on the Rubin telescope you might have heard of, and it's going to be opening this year in Chile. And then we have the policy hub, and Aaron is here, Aaron Boley, and he's actually at it's really cool, the Outer Space Institute in Canada, and he'll tell you more about that. And he actually is a co-director there. And he's going to tell you about the Policy Hub, which studies national and international policies and regulations related to the use of space. And then the next is up on the hit list is the Industry and Technology Hub. And I think we don't have our representative here, but I could try to give those slides if that's okay. And they concentrate on fostering collaboration between the astronomy and the satellite operator communities. And finally, we're going to have the Community Engagement Hub, which will be artfully given by the co-lead, John Barentine, who's also here with us. And his hub makes bridges between involved stakeholders and affected communities, and he'll tell you more about that. And that does include Indigenous communities as well. And then there's all of you, our members, which are, right now, they're over 400. So this next slide was meant to go out to people who had not, my slides are not working at the moment. Are you guys still on with me? Yeah, this is what happens to my slide set. It doesn't advance sometimes. Okay, here we go. Maybe, yes. Oh, good. Back one. Okay, so this is a slide on participation. If I can get it back, here we go. And you know, as you are just beginning to be part of the CPS, the center, Dimitri, we have the CPS is mainly volunteers. There's very few of us that are paid at all, and it's an amazing thing. These volunteers have dedicated so much time to making so much happen, and you'll hear all about that in the next few slides. And so joining the CPS is easy. And are you a bona member at this point, Dimitri?
Yeah, I've received.
Have you joined as affiliated member?
Yes, the policy hub and the community engagement hub.
Very good. Okay, so you know all about this. So I leave this slide up just for a second for other people to read. And here are the emails too, if you want to contact any of the other hub leads other than policy. Dimitri, you're in the policy one, but you are involved with Indigenous populations, you said. That's interesting. So you probably want to write to the community-engage@cps.iu.org to talk with John later on. Okay. All right. So I'll go on to the first. Oh, any questions first? Do you have any questions for me? Okay, hearing none. I'm going to open the slides to our CPS hubs, and the first one is the SAT hub.
Connie, there is a question by Michelle.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hi, Michelle. How are you?
Yada, good, thanks. One thing I'd like to ask about is what is the preferred method of communication? Because in the past, we have some hubs that appear to do their communication entirely by email, and we have some hubs that do their communication via Slack. So what is actually the way that is preferred for each hub, and can that be made clear?
Yes, well, each hub has a different preference. There's two preferences. One is Slack, which is mostly done by Sat Hub. They communicate very much by Slack. They have many Slack channels that are very well defined. But the Policy Hub, I think, does mostly, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Erin, mostly by email, or is it mostly by by Slack now?
It's been mostly by email, but a lot of people want to use Slack. I do recognize that, and a lot of people. So I can force myself into more into that situation. But at the moment, the Policy Hub email is the best way, or just email me directly. I could put that email in here.
Right, because it means we have some inequity in some hubs. It's very straightforward to figure out what's going on, and other hubs it's completely opaque.
Yes, yes. We are trying to address that and and I think it really is dictated by what the members want most. So as more members get involved, we'll be accommodating their needs. And I do know, for instance, though, that the Industry Hub does not really prefer Slack. I don't think many industries do use Slack, so they are communicating mostly by email. But I think also, John, you can speak to what you guys do. John's still here?
Yeah,
Uh-oh.
we've mostly worked
Oh, there you
through
are.
email, but I'm trying to get people to use Slack, put it that way. But mainly the people that we've interacted with have preferred email.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we should basically expect that policy and industry will not be making use of the Slack. Right, thank you.
Well, that's not quite what I was saying. I was saying I'm going to try to do better. I actually find that Slack very difficult for me to use just because of the way I operate, because I have a hard time with social media and keeping those long threads. Some people find it to be very useful, and it's just a different organization style. So that's what we run into. And then there are other issues about, how information is tracked. But using Slack, I mean, I see the utility. I know people are wanting to have that, so all the information is there. So we can make our best effort to move toward using Slack, but I can't promise a sudden change.
Well, I really do appreciate that question, Michelle. And if you have any suggestions as to better ways of communicating as a group, that would be very welcomed. Can you think of any better ways, Michelle?
Oh, I'm more commenting on what I've observed over the last
Okay.
while
No, that's good.
CPS was established, of this is where the place of communication's happening. So
No,
we should
I agree
I
with
think
you.
it's more just we should be transparent about this is where these communities within CPS are actually having their conversations.
Okay. And
Well, as you know, Michelle, we are well aware of this problem, and in fact, this initiative of the town hall is one of the way that we would think we can improve the communication. I want to just to mention something that I didn't mention before, which we are now organizing a welcome committee for the members, who will be open to receive any comment and suggestion to improve the communication. Certainly, communication is key in order to make the best interaction with the community. So thank you for the comment. Very, very useful.
yeah, I agree. Well, we'll talk offline and try to get some more ideas with you, Michelle. And so let's turn the proverbial microphone back over to Meredith, if she'd like.
Sure, thank you. I'm here. So yes, thank you, Michelle, for jumping in with that question. Indeed, the SatHub co-leads are very on Slack. That doesn't mean that everybody in the world has to be, and it also doesn't mean that every subgroup within SatHub necessarily uses Slack. You know, if SatHub is very flexible, if you have a project that you're working on and you want to bring it to SatHub and work with us, you know, it can still be your project. So, you know, there's some flexibility there. So anyway, my name is Meredith Rawls. I am a research scientist at the University of Washington and one of the 3 co-leads of SatHub. Mike Peel is based in UK and I believe he's currently traveling, and Siegfried Egel is based in Illinois, US as well. And he will be valiantly taking the, I guess, the later UT shift for the meetings today. You go to the next slide, please. If you can hear me. There we go. Okay, a little bit of a lag, no problem. So I don't want to belabor this because most of you probably kind of sort of know what the hubs are. SatHub is the data analysis one, and we are kind of what you think of when you think of traditional astronomy, but we're also broader than that. We are all about any flavor of observation that you can do, be it with your eyeballs, be it with your 10-meter fancy spectrometer, be it with your radio telescope, whatever. We care about what satellites are doing to you. Doesn't mean we can fix it all, but getting a handle on what's happening is the first step towards mitigating it. It's kind of our unofficial motto that I made up just now. A key point is that we really are a collaboration amongst many different communities. So while I'm a professional astronomer and Siegfried is an astronomer and an aerospace engineer, and Mike is an astronomer, so we are very academia and astronomy biased. We also collaborate with experienced amateurs, policymakers, industry professionals, folks from satellite operator companies, and many more. So we've tried to do things in as open source and publicly available ways as we can, but we also recognize there are limits because, for example, if you call up your favorite local satellite operator and say, hello, please tell me every physical detail about your satellite so that we can model its brightness, they will not say yes. So we are aware that there are constraints that we have to work within. And similarly, you know, if you say, hello, every telescope in the world, please start observing satellites and sending us all of your data right now, they have other things to do, it turns out. So the images down here are to kind of give a sampling of the various things that we're observing and working on. The one on the left is a Starlink satellite from the Gen 2 Mini, I believe, subset that looks blue, and we figured out that they look blue sometimes to the naked eye because there is a backing on the solar panels that actually they changed to make a blue color. And I only learned this because we have open dialogue with SpaceX engineers, and they were willing to come to a call that we were hosting with SatHub and some colleagues to better understand how to model the brightness of satellites. And they offered that explanation. I was able to share that with other astronomers so we could at least know there was a physical reason, even if we didn't love it. The middle one here is an actual like image of a Starlink satellite that was not taken by a SatHub member, but it's the kind of information that we want to make easier to find and disseminate if you're trying to make slides or talk about like how big are these things relative to each other, or like what is the approximate, you know, configuration. That's helpful. And then on the right here, we have an example of a snapshot at a given moment from a place on Earth, what satellites are up above in the sky right now. And that leads well into the next slide, please. Maybe. Because that all sky projection is actually the result of using a tool called Sat Checker, which I think is mentioned on the next slide, or yeah, if we get to it. Sorry, your computer's being cranky, Connie. There we go. Yes, so this is the third bullet on here, but Sat Checker is a new software tool that that we've developed at SatHub. We do have a lead software engineer whose actual job is to do software engineering for SatHub, and she's based at NORLab in Tucson, Arizona, where Connie is, with one of the 2 co-hosts of the CPS, and she's great and has spearheaded the development of this Sat Checker satellite position prediction service. It's I should have put the website on here. It's I can put it in the chat, satchecker.readthedocs IO. And it is fully open source and documented and under development. So try it out for all of your satellite forecasting needs. We have a beta field of view service as well that made the plot in the previous slide to say, hey, given a certain location, like what's up? Because people want to answer that question more often than they want to answer the question of when will this specific satellite go over my location, which is a easier question to answer. So I can talk more about that if people want. We've also developed a new satellite constellation observation repository that we're calling SCORE, because astronomers love an acronym. And this is also available at score.cps.iau.org. Again, I'm sorry that website's not on there. Put that in here too. And that is also a freely available repository where people are invited to upload their observations of how bright satellites are. And we want to expand this to many different uses. At the moment, it is most useful for optical, either visual or telescope or binocular, anything in between observations. And we're working on writing up a paper to kind of officially introduce it, but it is live, it does work. Send us your bug reports and please try it out. The real take home here is that we want to quantify the impact of satellites on optical and radio astronomy, and we want to use that information to then help coordinate mitigation efforts with all of the various companies and other stakeholders. So if it involves that, we would love to connect with you and help share expertise. I believe there's one more slide. Yes, so just to give an example of one project that is currently ongoing, as you may know, ASD Space Mobile launched the Blue Walker 3 prototype in 2022, and it was this giant tennis court size reflective white panel situation. And some astronomers were a little bit concerned that this was going to be one of the brightest things in the night sky. So we actually published a paper in Nature that quantified that brightness. And sometimes it was actually as bright as 0th magnitude. So this thing really is sometimes one of the brightest things in the sky. And it's almost always visible to the unaided eye, which is well above the CPS's official brightness recommendations. So you'll probably hear more about in a little bit of magnitude 7 or so. And so we have reached out to ASD Space Mobile. You know, they obviously still want to launch their satellites and offer their product. So it's not like we're not trying to tell them to stop, and they're not offering to stop. But they are offering to share some information with us and to help us understand exactly where their satellites are at any given time, and better effectively model how bright their satellites are. And there's a paper that's in progress to report on some of that as well. So we're pleased that well, we're not pleased that the sky is filling up with super bright things potentially, but we are pleased that we have connections and willing collaboration amongst the various key players to get a better handle on it. And work towards a better overall coexistence than might happen if not for SatHub. So with that, I'm happy to hand it over to whichever hub is next, or I can take questions or whatever the format is supposed to be at this moment.
Let's take questions if we can. I'm trying to see if Chris can come online to give the talks, but maybe not. Go ahead, take some questions. And we have 29 people to choose from. I cannot see everybody right now, but let me see if I can get the participants.
Well, I can't tell you, Chris is here now. So hello, Chris. Welcome to Evening Shift.
Oh,
okay. But I don't see any hands up. So I'm happy to move along, and we can take questions at the end if people want.
Good. All right. So Chris, if there's no questions from the audience, I can very happily turn the mic over to you, Chris.
Okay, so we can go to the next slide. Yeah, and I apologize. I had this in my calendar for tomorrow night, so I was off a day. Yep. But thank you for reaching out, Connie, to grab me just in time before I went to bed. So apologies for that. Yeah. All right, so I'm here to speak about the Industry and Technology Hub. And I'm one of the co-chairs.
Oh, sorry. This thing doesn't.
Yeah, I'm one of the co-chairs with Tim Stevenson, who's with SKAO, and then Patricia Cooper, I've known for many, many years, and she works with us and just a huge asset with her experience. And of course, she used to work at SpaceX or Starlink as well when all this started back in 2019. So she does have some good experience from the beginning of this issue when it arose. My name's Chris Hofer. I'm with Amazon and I actually Project Kuiper. We're getting ready to launch our first set of satellites, I believe, next month. So certainly there'll be press releases when that occurs. There is some massive pressure up in Kirkland, Washington, where the satellite's being built and being shipped down to Florida to meet some deadlines. So the company is really working hard to meet these deadlines, and you can imagine there's a little bit of stress going on right now with the first set that are coming off the assembly line, so to speak. I've been in the satellite business for about 25 years, regulatory background, a lot of work in ITU. I live in Geneva, Switzerland, it seems like. I've been going there since 1998. A lot of experience with communications and satellite coordination. And then, of course, when I joined Amazon in 2020, this was a brand new issue to me that I was not aware of, and it was a fairly new issue to everybody. So I've been tasked to work on this, and of course, been pushing internal to the company as well to address this and take this seriously. We'll go to the next slide, please. And so really what we've been working the most on right now is really raising awareness of this issue with the satellite operators, reaching out to those who are, I would say, real in developing their plans, have the money to back it. I think all are aware that there are the many satellite filings out there, and I would say a large portion of those are not real. We've lived this through my whole life of the GSO arc, a particular orbital position will have many filings behind it, and most of them are not real as well. So this is what's happening here as well. So when folks say that there's going to be 30,000 or 50,000 satellites by 2030, it really isn't reality. It's how much funding is behind these, but we do see a lot of administrations out there do want their own LEO system, and so people want what Starlink has and what Amazon will have soon. But we were able to bring on, I think, about 16 member companies of the operators and help with situational awareness, which I think is really important. Some of the work I do in the ITU with all the satellite operators, I had a session with folks at lunch to help raise the awareness with them as well a few years ago. This topic, I think you'll all be pleased, is very important around the world. And when I visit other administrations to discuss items that are important to us and licensing within the country, this topic definitely comes up, and I'm able to share at least what we're doing internally related to this. And for example, in December, I was down in Santiago, Chile, dealing with a few issues. And of course, this was on the agenda as well. And it was great to meet some of the folks that are related to the telescopes down there. So really, I see we're in a phase of moving towards, we've got all the satellite operators we believe that are there and out there and real. I'll put China on the side a little bit, right? So I do see some of the China operators now in Geneva, which is fairly new. I think we still need to address some of this with them. But I think we're looking this particular year moving over towards the satellite manufacturers and trying to pull them in and get them on board with this, and to start looking at providing options, when satellites are being built. And so I'll use an example of aircraft and use Boeing, for example. I used to work at a company called Viasat, and they provide Wi-Fi to the aircraft. And now when airlines order an airplane from Boeing, when they go on the list to check the items they want on the airplane, now Wi-Fi antennas are there to be able to check, and you can check a Viasat antenna. So I think we'd really like to get to that point where the manufacturers provide some options here, or some what we think are solutions to their customers as they build the satellites. So that's one of our ultimate goals here as well. And then the Global Satellite Operators Association, I've been involved with that group for many years. That has a large group of satellite operators that are members and meet on a regular basis. And they've just developed a code of conduct on space sustainability. Space sustainability is very important now and front and center in front of administrations. And they've added this topic into there, that limiting impact on optical astronomy. So this is in front of all of the associated members as well. So we think that's very good. And so I think, to be honest, you're kind of looking at a cast of 3. And I think the amount of work we've done, I do want to put a little pat on the back for ourselves. And then of course, especially Patricia with all of her contacts and her background that she's had in the satellite industry as well. Yep. Okay, next slide, please. And mitigations for satellites, this sort of kind of goes through the flow of what we've been doing. And so again, I touched on, enlisting the constellation operators. We're going to move over to try to get more manufacturers involved as well. And I think we've done a pretty good job with the enlist part. The inform, we've had a couple town halls ourselves, and to be honest, Starlink has the most satellites up, and they have, I believe, in my view, done a lot of work at mitigating the reflectivity. And so they've got a white paper together as well. So they've been very helpful. And we've had a session with the operators with Starlink as the lead, explaining what they have done. And then I'm sharing what we're doing as well. And really the dielectric mirrors is an important concept here that I think most folks on the call are aware of. And then also our group is continuing to exchange and have these meetings. We're looking 1 to 2 per year, but also we've developed a document that has a list of resources out there that can help. Who can make some I'm gonna, if I get it right, the BRDF or BDRF measurements, materials, who can provide, for example, the dielectric mirrors, et cetera, to try to help provide some items where the operators can at least start to reach out and start to look at putting some of these products on their satellites to minimize the reflectivity. And I would say we're still honestly in the research and development portion of this. And so certainly Amazon, with our 2 test satellites, we put some dielectric mirrors on them on one satellite to test how well that would minimize reflectivity compared to the other satellite without any mitigation, because we needed a baseline to see how effective this was. And we were able to see a difference between the 2. We are developing, we have one of our own telescopes in Texas. We're looking to put a couple more around the world, and then have some other companies to help us with these measurements as our first set of satellites go up. So we're still internally building our own tools as well, so we can collect our own measurements. And I'm hoping eventually Amazon is very careful and keeping data in-house, I think, is what many folks on this call are aware. So I'm hoping eventually we will be able to publish some papers on this and share this information. And then of course, share information with the Sat Hub as they take some measurements in the future. We tried a little bit with the test satellite, and to be honest, it wasn't up there very long. And by the time the Sat Hub started to take measurements, we were actually already bringing it down. So it really was a short-term test phase that we were going through with other testing capabilities. But we certainly will have some more opportunities to do this in the future and compare our measurements, et cetera. And as folks know, to keep at a magnitude of 7 or greater, 24 hours, 7 days a week, I would basically say is almost impossible or impossible, giving, the angle of the sun and where the satellite is, the altitude and elevation angle, et cetera. The brightness is always changing, but of course we're looking to minimize as much as we can. And I think we're going to need to find some other potential technologies in the future to help tackle this. And let's see, I think we can go to the last slide right now. And I think the astronomer guides is something that the group had come up with and the management. And so we've been able to connect 6 astronomer guides with 6 satellite operators. So 1 guide per operator. Our goal here is to have maybe a more candid conversation between the 2 parties, potentially an NDA if needed, and we hope that will help facilitate those particular operators in tackling these issues with a more private conversation, because some companies are careful, and Amazon is as well, when you're speaking in a larger group. And I would say at one level, I think it was helpful for us to have kind of a satellite only group where we can talk amongst ourselves. But then I think this one-on-one is going to be very helpful as well. But like I say, it's kind of the pilot year. We've just started this, unable to report on how well it's worked. working, or if we could give some examples of, hey, this astronomer working with this particular company, these new ideas are being implemented, and we can kind of sort of say like we have a win here right now. But definitely these more detailed conversations from the astronomy community can help educate the satellite operators, which is always part of it. And then I think it's also vice versa, where you can potentially share what some of the limitations are of what we can do on the satellites as well. So there's some education that can take place in both directions. So with that, that is a summary of what we've been doing the last year and where we are. And like I said, you really have a 3-person team performing a lot of this work. And there's been assistance from the management as well to help line up the astronomy guides, for example. But as far as creating the membership and all that, that really was a small group pulling folks together. So any questions?
Hello, Chris. Sorry, I just joined the CPS pretty recently, so
I can't. I apologize. You sound very far away. I apologize. Yeah.
Sorry. Is this any better now?
Big difference. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So at the risk of asking the obvious, I just joined the CPS pretty recently, and I know you're confined within NDAs and all sorts of corporate policies. Is the public informed of any reason why so many satellites are being launched?
Is the public informed why this is occurring? So what's happening right now, and I think COVID has really proven the point that there is a thirst and a need for broadband services around the world. The ITU has statistics of billions of people that still don't have proper internet that all of us have on this call, for example. And so there certainly is a belief that there's a demand for this type of services around the world. And I truly believe the GSOs that provide broadband, Starlink, Amazon, and others, that there are going to be plenty of customers for these companies to succeed. Does that answer your question, or?
Yes, thank you. I
Yeah.
will think about it. Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm. But I don't have it in front of me, but there are some ITU statistics out there of poor broadband around the, or no broadband around the world. And of course, our mission statement is to connect the unconnected and the underserved. And so we truly believe that there is a market out there for this type of service. And this is for people where fiber and terrestrial communications are not able to reach as well. And so an example, the previous company I used to work for, we had a great slide that had a picture of the United States at night, and you could see the bright lights, kind of where all the populations are. And then we had a picture of where our customers were, and it matched almost perfectly 1-to-1. And so one of the issues we have in the US is what we call the last mile. So as neighborhoods are built out and the fiber coax cable is put out, eventually those companies get to a point where there's not enough customers and they stop digging and serving them. And so there's people always on the edges that are left out. And that's where the satellite companies have been able to come in and assist with that service. Yeah. I see another hand up as well. But first of all, Dimitri, did I answer your questions?
Thank you. I think I had heard some of your colleagues say that this would not be a viable business model to deploy such a wide extent of technology for the service of smaller communities.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Something to state that certainly we're putting at least $10 billion into the system, and to just serve the underserved and the unserved only, I agree 100%. That is not a business model that is sustainable. The business model that all of us satellite operators are in have different margins. The largest margin is when you sell your service to the military, right? So DoD is a very important customer, and you're providing a very different service for them, right? And then you can use the Wi-Fi on aircraft, but in my view, that's less of a margin. There's more margin for maritime, the ships. That's a very good business to be in. And then you have the home, the service to the homes, when the margin's even less. And then you have what's called Wi-Fi community that has really taken off, and it's been really good for the folks who don't have internet. So I'll use Mexico as an example, where a GSO operator would tap into villages of 200 to 1,000 people that would be maybe up in the mountains, no fiber, no cell phone service whatsoever. The children in that village are bused to a school where they do have connectivity. The kids would stay there to do their work on the internet because they don't have it at home. We would put a single antenna on the grocery store in the village that would create a Wi-Fi hotspot, and then the community would come to that hotspot with their own devices and use it. And at the time, we were charging 50 cents per hour for them to do this. And believe it or not, there's a margin of profit in there, for example. But it's also a great story of helping these folks, and it just changes their lives. They can communicate with their kids at school and coordinate with them. Beforehand, they had zero communication, for example. And thousands of these have popped up in Mexico, and the administration, the regulators, the government are very pleased by this service being provided to those folks.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay, I see another hand, Ken.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Before you arrived here, there was a question and a discussion about how we were communicating, and that some of the hubs have chosen to use Slack extensively and primarily, and some of them have chosen not to use it so much and to use email and other communications methods. And it sounded to me as if the ones where we have people outside that we're communicating with a lot have tended to be outside of Slack, and the ones where we're all largely inside the group, inside the house, we all use Slack. One of our members described the industry hub as dead because you don't see very much on Slack, and misunderstood that. So it occurred to me that one thing we could do to try to mitigate that would be for industry hub and others that may have a lot of outside users to continue using other means that are not Slack for much of the communication, but to have a repository that shows some of the results, perhaps on a Google Drive location that's visible and accessible to all of us, so that everybody does see in a more clear way what accomplishments have been made. Does that have any interest?
Sure, that's fine with me. I'm certainly was not aware of, I'll just be honest with our group. Tim has been the one who's got the email list, and he uses email as we're pulling people in to set up a town hall, for example. So I do not believe we use Slack, and so I'm not, to be honest, don't quite understand. If I don't think we're set up to use Slack, I could be totally wrong, but that's something we could look into, as to we have to reset up the folks, the satellite operators. Certainly, I don't think they're on the Slack, so we'd have to rework that a little bit to do so. And then we've been putting some things on the website under our link, I guess. Some of the items are there. We have some material to read to help educate the satellite operators, and it's broken down by pages, etc., to help them understand what the reading material may be, and tackle that and actually look at it. The directory of services, so far we decided to keep that internal to the satellite operators. We've been providing it to them, but we haven't published that on the website. That was a decision that the management of the INT made. And so I think that's about it. I don't think we have published either a list of members, to be honest. We've shared that with the management team, but I would need to take a look at our webpage again. I personally don't look at it too much, to be honest, but should take a look at it, see what's on there, and if we can update it a bit. Yeah.
Well, you also have a description for the astronomer guides on there too.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Well, that's a
Thanks.
great question.
Yep.
Are there any other people that are here who would like to ask a question? It's a rare opportunity to speak with somebody from industry. So, okay.
There's a question in the chat from Michelle.
Oh, thank you.
I
didn't
have
see
the
that.
chat. Let's see, where's the chat? Here we go.
So from Michelle, okay, so how does the industry group manage diversity, i.e. inclusion of companies across countries? As an IAU group, multi-country work is normal.
If I'm interpreting this correctly, that would be part of the GSOA Association, where the satellite operators all work together. Satellite operators are global. And so we will deal a lot with, say, consultations. And so the particular work that I do is all in the ITU, and it's related to changing the radio regulations to add, additional spectrum or additional capabilities like mobility, et cetera. And once we get those changes at a World Radio Communication Conference, countries individually will start to put that into their domestic rules, and they do that through what's called consultations. The FCC does this all the time as well. And GSOA comments on all of those consultations, for example. So we do work very closely together in that forum. Working Party 4A in Geneva, we're working together. The WRC process, we see each other all the time in all the meetings, and they're all broken down by region. So when there's a meeting in Asia, you've got all the Asia regulators together for a week. We're all in there talking to people, dealing with licensing or other issues or outreach and items like that. So that we do work very closely together, and we're all trying to get access and licenses in most of the same countries as well. The large markets are out there. US is one of them, of course. And of course, Europe, large markets. And then you go down to South America, you got Brazil is a large market, et cetera. So we're all working together, and the regulators like competition, and competition helps drive better services and drives down the prices, et cetera. So that's when you get into the business of market. And I think competition is really good. I think when some other satellite operators come online, it'll be really good to help drive the prices down that may be used today, for example, and it'll be good for the consumer. And then the consumer is going to choose what's the best service to use and the best customer service experience. And so all of that will play into that. And unfortunately, in my view, we're going to see one day, not too far from now, you're going to sit on an airplane. It'll be no different than when you're in your office. You'll stream everything, full capabilities. Now I question whether that's a good thing or not. Sometimes I like to turn everything off on the airplane, and do other things. Yeah. Does that answer Michelle's question, or do you want to get into something a little more detailed? Yeah. So your IAU group, most likely I would say, is sort of equivalent to our GSOA group. Yeah.
Well, we have a comment or question from Piero, and then we need to let John
just
take the
a
reins.
comment on, because Michelle is raising a very interesting point. My comment is that these 3 years of activity of the CPS show that for the first time we had an interaction, a very close interaction from a community, the astronomical community, which is used to work in some very international interactive way with the private industry, a series of private industries, not just one. And it has been quite interesting to see how this can work. And we are learning about that. So the interaction is improving in time, but definitely at the beginning it was not immediately easy to communicate, because obviously the interest and the style of working is different. So it has been a very interesting learning process. I think we are progressing in the possibility of interacting with more companies and finding the possibility of progressing together. But that has been quite an interesting comment. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody. And if it's all right, I'd like to move on to John's presentation of the Community Engagement Hub. John?
Thanks, Connie. And actually, Piero's comment is very relevant and a good segue into my part this evening. My name is John Barentine. I already know a lot of you, but for those that I don't, I co-lead the Community Engagement Hub with my colleague Jessica Heim, who will take the next session several hours from now to present on our behalf. And I say Piero's comment is a good segue because really getting at the heart of what he was referring to is this idea of building a working relationship. And for those of us who came from the astronomy side, of course, as he said, this is a very new experience working with industry. And so it's been insightful. It's helped us think about some of the things that we do, for example, in our hub. And that's the bridge to talking about the kinds of things that we're doing, looking beyond just this immediate community within CPS that's mainly composed of either astronomy people or space industry people. So Connie, if I could have next slide, please.
Yes, sorry.
And that theme of being a bridge is what is most important to us. We started out 3 years ago in this sort of very aspirational position where we thought what we would be doing was bringing all of these different groups outside of CPS, but who have some stake in the outcome of what CPS does, kind of get them all at the same table and talk to each other and, bring in these people who largely have been left out of decision making in the past, having to do with things like space policy, so that their voices would be heard. And we're still very dedicated to that. But one of the things that we discovered along the way is that as we began our outreach, in many cases, we found that the targets of our outreach explained to us that they didn't really understand the issues. Of course, we had been immersed in it as the astronomy community for a couple of years by that time, but we still encounter quite a few people external to CPS for whom this is still a relatively new topic, and they're telling us they need to better understand the factual nature of the topic before they can form an opinion. So we have pivoted slightly since the inception of CPS to a perspective where we feel that our role is as much about education and about informing our stakeholder populations as it is about engaging them in the issues. So we want to improve their understanding of the issues around the satellite phenomenon by providing them with accurate and factual information about that. And then as they come up in a level of understanding of the subject, then begin to engage them on their opinions or their views on these subjects, which our task is then to bring back to CPS to inform its work. So next slide, please. And when I say our stakeholders or our constituency groups, this is a sampling of who we think those people are. And it took us a while to figure that out. Again, coming from the relatively narrow perspective of the astronomy community. And of course, professional astronomers, which are an important part of CPS, are still one of our constituencies because we find that a surprising number of them outside of CPS really do not know very much about this issue. They don't perceive that it has yet affected them personally in their academic work, for example. But we also have connections with the amateur astronomy community, people who are what I would describe as users of the night sky in one form or another. For some, there's a cultural angle to that. For some, it's a matter of recreation. For some, it's the way that they earn their livelihood. We've talked to people who run astrotourism enterprises. And as I like to say, I think ultimately our constituency is all 8 billion people on this planet because they all have an interest at some level in what becomes of the night sky. It's one of the few things in our world that is common to all people in all places and times and doesn't make distinctions based on where they live or what language they speak, etc. So we're trying to cater to this very broad cross-section of people around the world in our mission to both educate and also engage with them. Next slide. Can you go back one for me, Connie? I did want to mention what our main product we have produced so far, and Piero alluded to this in his introduction, is something that we call SatCons 101. And to directly address the need to educate about the factual subject matter, we developed a curriculum of 8 learning modules that are built around the various aspects of the satellite issue as it impacts astronomy. So that's both, optical and infrared, but also radio. But we also talk about things like the cultural impacts, the effect on the heritage element of the night sky, the kinds of things that the complete life cycle of satellites can have as impacts on the global environment. So we're looking beyond astronomy because these are things that people are interested in, and it touches on things in their everyday lives. But we also are trying to promote this idea of actively working with the satellite industry on coming up with the mitigations. And so explaining what those are like and how this dialogue is ongoing. And we broke this up into a group of short videos, about 10 minutes apiece. So with a modest investment of time, a person who doesn't have a background in this could come up to speed with it very quickly to have a level of understanding where they can begin to understand the challenges that are involved, the nature of the situation we find ourselves in with the impacts to astronomy and how astronomers are trying to address that. We've gotten very good feedback on this so far. The notion of translating our materials into other languages has come up. We would very much like help translating the scripts for these videos into other languages so that we can produce at least subtitled versions of them. But right now, they are all available in English. They're all on YouTube, and they're also embedded on the CPS website. So they're very easy to get to, and you can get to them at either that address or you can scan that QR code. Next slide, please. So what we have in mind for at least this year and looking ahead into the next triennium, the next period of the Memorandum of Understanding between CPS and IAU, one thing is that we want to engage in more strategic communications, realizing that communicating is a key part of what we do. We've recently gone through an exercise in writing a strategic communication plan that involved assessing what we know about our constituencies, what we think they understand about the issues, where they get their information, how they prefer to be contacted or communicated with. And with that in mind, we distilled down what we believe are the fundamental ideas that CPS is trying to get across to all of its constituencies into a series of 6 what we call key messages. That is what we want our constituencies to know about the issue and what CPS is doing to address it. And over this year and in coming years, we will be progressively rolling this out through a series of strategic actions to communicate that to these groups, and also leveraging things like media context to help get the story out to broader audiences. So you'll definitely be hearing more about this from us in the near future. Next slide, please. We're going to continue to develop educational and informational content based on the needs that we find in interactions with our constituencies. We will hold at least 3 town halls this year. We'd like to do more if possible. We did one last year that we thought went pretty well. Where there are those specific needs, we will work on educational products to support them. For example, we have an idea about creating themed planetarium shows, which are a good way to reach the wider public. I'll tell you in a moment about an effort that we're going to undertake this year to try to promote a document that we refer to as a CPS position statement. And then again, there are the translations for as many situations as where we can get the help to translate them into ideally at least the 6 United Nations languages and potentially more if we can find the native speakers who can help us with that. Next slide, please. And of course, we will continue to make outreach to new groups that we've not had contact with before, individuals in different parts of the world that can be sort of ambassadors, if you will, and carry the message of CPS into their countries and communities in their languages and their cultural idioms as well. That's very important to us. And strengthening those relationships with groups and individuals is something that takes time. And we've learned about this particularly in the context of working with people from indigenous communities where personal relationships are really the coin of the realm. And it takes a long time to build up those relationships to the point that people feel comfortable being in dialogue with you. So it's something that takes constant attention and cultivation. And I think it may be some years yet before those relationships begin to bear fruit. One more slide, please. And so lastly, I've mentioned this CPS position statement, which is formally called the Call to Protect the Dark and Quiet Sky from Harmful Interference by Satellite Constellations, that was published by CPS last year in spring. It's available online. It represents the view of the IAU on this topic. And because we have been asked by some of the people that we interact with, if we have a call to action as CPS, because the organization has decided that it's in its best interest not to be the entity that goes and does the lobbying, for example. But we could deputize a whole army of people to go out and talk to their elected officials, their national space agencies, et cetera, and promote the recommendations of the report which relate to the mitigation actions. So in 2025, we're going to build up a communication campaign around the CPS position statement to encourage our constituencies to go out and promote it. And that will be everything from informational resources, fact sheets, et cetera, that explain the issues and the recommendations. But it will also be something like a playbook of techniques and approaches. And those may be things like scripts for conversations with lawmakers, or suggested text for letters that can be sent to space agencies, that sort of thing, so that we can give people something to do, so they feel like they're positively engaging with CPS and supporting its mission, because we now have this document that lays out what our recommendations are. We want them to take this into their communities and support and promote that. So that's what we're going to be doing in coming years. We hope that you will join us in this effort. That's all I have for you. Happy to take your questions. Otherwise, I will hand it back to Connie.
Let's see. Okay.
Thank you,
There-
George.
Oh.
I'll just make a comment if it's okay. I own several stargazing businesses in Australia, and I make the issue of the sky brightening known to the public. And once the public are informed, they are very keen to do something about it. And they're asking me for a call to action. So and I have none to offer them at this stage. So I'm very keen to reading more about the call that you're mentioning, and to be part of it too.
Great. We should definitely talk about that, Dimitri. And we would love to have people who kind of look in on this as we're developing it and advise us. And this is exactly the kind of feedback that I hope that we will get as we go through that process. So yes, let's be in touch about that.
Okay. Do we have any further questions? John's experience is very, very robust, and if you'd like to ask him anything at all about what he's talked about, he's very knowledgeable. So please feel free. Don't be shy.
And of course, you can always contact us after the fact if you want to talk privately or about issues that are more specific to your part of the world. We're always open to talk to folks.
We have a question in the chat from Michelle, and how do CE and policy coordinate in the national space policy spaces?
That is a very timely question, Michelle, as we're looking to meet up with the policy folks pretty soon to talk through the position statement campaign in particular. And the reason for that is they've just done this really wonderful survey of national and international space policy as it applies to this subject. So we have that. We have the position statement with its recommendations, some of which are policy matters. And so the challenge is, because I expect as we roll this out, people are going to come to us and say, all right, you're asking for A, B, and C as these policy priorities, but they're kind of described at a conceptual level in the position statement. How do we operationalize that? How would an interested country actually write this into its national law if it chose to do so? We had a very interesting case study in that just this summer that resulted from some contacts that we made at the IAU General Assembly, in which we learned that the Kenyan Space Agency was about to articulate a policy framework for the first time and had a public consultation open. And so we got with the policy folks and they provided comment on that at just the right time. So that's the kind of thing I think we'll be doing with them more as we get feedback coming up from the people on the ground who are out there promoting the recommendations in the policy or in the position statement, that we will work with them to help figure out how will we do this practically speaking in these different jurisdictions. So I think we're going to be working a lot more closely in the next 3 years than we have in the past 3 years.
Very good.
And if I could just add, if I may, to that, and just say that even with what's happened so far, as John was alluding to, I mean, I feel like we have a very good relationship, Juliana and I, with John and Jessica, and that we do have informal conversations back and forth, sometimes over Zoom, sometimes over email, about issues as they emerge. And I think it has led to a number of really productive things. The Kenya Space Agency was just one particular example. And so there is a lot of talk between us because as the question alludes to, we are connected. Thank you.
And again, I don't think we could have planned a better segue into the next speaker, and that's Aaron Boley. He's going to talk about the Policy Hub. So Aaron, would you like to take it away?
Sure thing. Thank you to everyone for being here. My name is Aaron Boley. I'm an astronomer at the University of British Columbia. I also co-direct the Outer Space Institute. I have the privilege of working with Juliana Rotola, who cannot be here at the moment. She works directly in space law and space policy, and has been very active internationally. I do want to give a shout out. Richard Green's on the call here. So he was the former Policy Hub co-leads, along with Andrew Williams. And I want to just acknowledge that because some of the things that we're going to be talking about today kind of came under their leadership, and some of the things are newer that's under me and Juliana. But I'm not going to try to distinguish those as we go through. Okay, next slide, please. And so when it comes to policy, it's really about possibilities. We can take a look at what the landscapes are for the legal underpinnings, and through that we could understand, how is that interpreted between states? How is it interpreted internationally? How do non-state actors then engage within that realm? And that all comes down to policy. So we want to raise awareness with astronomy requirements. We want to coordinate work on multiple levels of governance and also among non-governmental organizations and NGOs. Advise, of course, the IAU on various responses. And we've had the privilege of being able to do that in multiple cases. I'll try to give a couple examples. Foster the development of better regulation. I try to emphasize this because it's not necessarily about more regulation. It's just about figuring out what combination of things work best. Sometimes it's going to be a combination of, you're going to have regulation and rules that come into place, but those are going to exist on side of national and international, national rules, international guidelines, and then also international best practices, and all of that exist together. And that's, again, the suite of possibilities that make a policy work. We also want to identify future threats. Now, if you look over on the right here, we have the strategic outcomes, and there are two basic components here. We want the astronomical community to be aligned with messages and work together to produce outputs that could be used for informing new policy or even reevaluating the existing policy. Then we also want to make sure industry is aware of this, as well as the policymakers. And so again, this comes down to the different levels of guidelines, regulations, and so forth. Next slide, please. We have a number of different activities that have been moving forward. And some of them have recently been accomplished, at least in their kind of first stage. We had the initial position paper has already been referred to, and there was John had the QR code. I posted a link. There's also then the work package 2, also previously alluded to, which is both a national and international landscape and detailed analysis of the rules and regulations from roughly around 2023 to a little bit into 2024. Now, things are happening rapidly. So while this still gives a very good overview, we have to understand that things are changing. And that's why I mentioned that this is an initial cut at this problem, or at least understanding the situation, because it's going to be constantly evolving. And so one of the things the Policy Hub has to keep in mind is how to keep on top of that. And for example, we're actually building a task force to do just that with a number of the individuals who contributed a very large amount to these reports. And I invite you to please take a look at those reports. The links are posted in the chat, and you can see all of the contributors there. Next slide, please. All right, so additional policy outputs with the consolidated recommendations. Please see the CPS website. So this builds on what was in the output of several of the workshop documents, as well as the position paper, and then that adds to that kind of the recommendations and tries to put it in a very succinct form. We did, as discussed, multiple letters to governments, and so governments have consultations to the public. Some of them are required to do so. Some of them are actually looking for input. And so this is happening throughout the world at different paces. And one of the things that we have to try to do is be on top of this and submit responses to ensure that the International Astronomical Union's position is understood. Now, we don't submit that directly. What we do is we recommend something to, say, Willie Benz, the IAU president, and then if the IAU chooses to move forward with it, they actually submit it. So we don't submit it directly. We make a recommendation to the IAU, and then the IAU does that recommendation. So just kind of make sure that that chain is clear on how that works. So, but what that means is that during these consultation process, whether it's the Canadian consultation process, we've had several of those, whether it's something going on with the FCC, lots of those, if it's going on with the Kenya Space Agency, EU, so forth. There is then usually a short letter that just hits those principles that astronomy is a form of the exploration of outer space, that we need to be mindful of how we're impacting the night sky for future generations, and so forth. The Policy Hub has tried to do what we can to support IAU responses at the UN, and we've had a couple different submissions and statements, either through different permanent observers at the UN. Sometimes it's through the IAU, but we've also had submissions to the European Southern Observatory, for example. Again, we don't submit it directly, but we make a recommendation of what to submit, and then that's taken and gone forward. And so, for example, the comment about astronomy being a form of space exploration is well within the UN record at this point. And then, of course, there's supporting IAU international processes and resolutions, such as providing input into Resolution 1 2024, which was when it was being drafted, which is really a fantastic resolution for what we are trying to do, because it directly then makes or charges IAU members to be involved in this process, to connect with national groups for that advocacy, and also talks about the Earth space environment and linkages between there. So it makes not just the dark and quiet skies movement by itself, but it links it to broader space sustainability, among other things. Next slide, please. Okay, a couple more things that have been going on. A lot of this stuff is ongoing, and for context, so this is not a claim that, like, any one of us did this, but this is part of the larger effort of the dark and quiet skies movement, and this is things that we have seen as a result of it. When it comes to policy, it's incredibly difficult to point your finger and say, this thing was submitted, then that thing happened, and say, oh, those are connected, because usually there's a lot of people that are working together. But there are conditions that have been added for NSF, for new FCC licenses for coordination. So that is at least positive development. Licensing conditions here with South Africa. And there's a lot going on, again, with that Earth and space sustainability. And what's fantastic here, in my opinion, is that we're seeing things like debris, space debris. You're not getting pushback from states or NGOs or operators that space debris is bad. And so what's happened here is that it's provided an opportunity for that inventive policy work in which people could put forward the propositions that, yes, let's talk about space debris, but as we talk about space debris, we're also talking about dark and quiet skies because they are connected. And so you see things like the Zero Debris Charter, which talks about broad space sustainability, which also has dark and quiet skies. You see Earth Space Sustainability Initiative, also containing dark and quiet skies, among many other things. And then there are other very creative instruments, various types of rating systems that are being proposed by independent groups that look to evaluate different companies. So think of like OceanWise and how it's evaluation of practices for catches and those type of things. It's the same idea, just expanded then into space, among other things. Next slide, please. To highlight some things that have been going on, and this is not directly involved with the Policy Hub, but just the scope of things that are happening. The Korean Astronomical Society will be making a statement, an official statement on dark and quiet skies, delivered to the Korea's National Space Agency. And then there are special sessions on dark and quiet skies and space sustainability in recent Korean-led meetings. So this is all part of that picture. Next slide, please. And at the STSC, a major achievement, I think, in a place in which you have to have consensus to operate, and consensus is incredibly difficult to achieve. There was a 5-year agenda item at the Scientific and Technical Subcommittee. So if you're not familiar with UN COPUS is the major international body for discussing space activities among states. You have the legal subcommittee and you have the science and technical subcommittee. And this agenda item is on the science and technical subcommittee. Within there is also the group of friends, Dark and Quiet Skies for Science and Society within COPUS is broad. And so these are a group of states who have come together to discuss this particular issue, as well as invite input from academics, from NGOs, and so forth. So it's actually a really potentially it's a group that has a lot of potential for growth in addressing this particular issue. Go to the next slide, please. It's not sure. The next slide's not showing. There we go. There we go. And just one more thing here with the EU space law consultation. This was one in which the Policy Hub and then the European Astronomical Society and then the Committee for Radio Astronomy Frequencies got together for aligned submissions, set of recommendations, and it also led to multiple responses from national societies and observatories across the EU. And so this is something that the Policy Hub was able to help facilitate. and guide responses. Again, lots of different people were involved with this, and thank you to all those of you listening. My apologies for not naming every single one, but this is a big team effort. Next slide, please. Finally, I want to end with a call, and that is, you heard me allude to the future space technologies and assessing future threats. We actually have a future space technologies working group. It's being led by Victoria Gronkowski. And what that working group currently needs is some independent external reviewers, and we're looking for 2. So I'm going to be announcing this here and also at the next hub, and we're also going to send out a quick call to the membership as a whole. But we're looking for people to help identify gaps within the assessments and to just really help flesh everything out. It's not actually as part of the working group, and that's really important because we want it to be, instead of adding more discussion within the group, but to have an external review of what's actually happened. And of course, if you would like to be acknowledged for that, you would be acknowledged. If you have interest, please do, for this one, definitely please send an email to the policy hub with a very short statement on why you want to conduct the external review, just so we could help assess kind of what you're coming in with for that assessment, what type of background and experiences. Those are the main components of the Policy Hub. There's one more slide about the World Radio Conference. Do you want me to cover that, Connie, or would someone else like to talk about that one? I can cover it if you want. Oh, Connie, I think you're muted.
I think you can, succinctly mention this, and I'll try to get people to give you some questions in just a minute.
Sure thing. So this is concerning the World Radio Conference 2027. So the International Telecommunications Union is the international body for coordinating radiative frequencies and spectrum use across all states. It's a pretty amazing body within the United Nations. And there are going to be several agenda items here that are directly related to the types of things we're talking about, looking at radio astronomy service bands and radio quiet zones, but from satellite systems. So this is something that we've been concerned about for a while, how you can't just go to a remote location if by design you eliminate the possibility of being able to get away from the satellites. There's also then the Earth Exploration Selective Service. I'm not sure if I got that quite right, but in the radio astronomy service above 76 gigahertz. Then, of course, cislunar space. So this becomes really important when we start taking the long view of how things will be conducted around the moon and on the moon, and what the possibilities are eventually for lunar and cislunar science, particularly things like radio astronomy on the far side of the moon. And then finally, there's a resolution that will be explored on the sustainable use of spectrum and space orbits, that's looking at how you actually can both allocate these orbits as well as the spectrum itself, which will be done in study groups within the ITU. And study groups are a way that the ITU can facilitate greater input, as well as to have discussions take place pretty persistently. Anyone who with the ITU who would like to further comment on that, please feel free to jump in.
I could
I
jump
do have
in.
a question.
Go ahead.
You
No,
first.
go ahead.
You first,
Yeah.
Chris.
No, just to add the flavor from the satellite operators. I mean, I live at the ITU, so a couple items. Definitely the resolution 74, sustainable use of spectrum. That work is taking place in Working Party 4A, and we're looking at updating that resolution, and right now creating a handbook, et cetera. So, there's a lot of activity on this topic as we're seeing around the world. Just wanted to touch one item, Agenda Item 1.16. Certainly very important in looking to protect radio quiet zones. which I'm finding is a requirement of certain countries before a satellite operator can get a license, right? So we're seeing that in the US. I'm very close to finishing my coordination with National Science Foundation. We almost got to signature before Christmas, but Christmas got in the way. We'll definitely have signature by next month. We're going to be done with that soon. And we've gone through the requirements that we need for Green Bank, for example, right? And Arecibo, I don't need to worry about because that's not operating in the K band anymore. So, and then there's some, I'll be honest, there's some voluntary requests that NSF is making because they do from time to time make measurements in the 18 gigahertz, and that's not a primary allocation for radio astronomy, which is the basis in the ITU for the work that we do. We look at primary allocations or potentially a new primary allocations. We do sharing studies, et cetera. So there's been some back and forth between 7D and 4A providing satellite characteristics and which bands to share. So the satellite operator point of view is we're here to look at the primary allocations of radio astronomy and to share satellite characteristics of systems that use those bands or are nearby, right? As the KU band, of course, is a big one, the 10.7 gigahertz. So that is why, as an example, the KA band operators like myself, we are not providing characteristics in this particular agenda item because there's not a radio astronomy primary allocation right next to us, so to speak. So I'm just sharing that view so people are aware. There's some of the discussions taking place in Geneva.
So
Just to spell it out, the UEMR, that's the unintended electromagnetic radiation. And so this is kind of a big issue that is potentially going to kind of explode in terms of the radio astronomy world. And so it's good that this is being discussed.
Yep.
Chris, do you want to mention what UEMR actually is? Or
I was going to ask what that acronym is, but is this maybe the electronics?
no, unintended
Sure.
Yeah, that's what I said. That's but I didn't spell it out, so sorry.
Yeah.
So UEMR is the unintended electromagnetic radiation. Yeah, that's things like the electronics and so forth.
Yep.
That just emit over broad ranges that are out of band and so forth.
Yes. So we're finding that Starlink has something like that occurring. And I'll be honest, we don't have a way internally yet within Amazon to take those type of measurements. So we're going to find out the hard way when they're in space to see how noisy they are. So this is something satellite operators in the past have not paid attention to, nor has it been an issue. So again, here we got something else that started with the Starlink satellites. But I have raised it within the company, but I'll just say we don't have a solution today. So, and I don't even know if there's going to be an issue. So,
Is it safe to ask a question? Okay, thank you. I'm probably going to show my ignorance, but is the sustainable use of a spectrum for the resolution 219, does that also cover spectrum sharing, or is that something different?
I don't, Chris would
don't have it in front of me, but that definitely is plenty pot.
Well, Federico's
right?
On the line. Maybe
so
Federico
that's outside of the WRC process. That's at plenty pot, and that's the number looks familiar to me. And I think there's been some, I'll say, battles between terrestrial and satellite and prominence of the use. But again, I don't have it in front of me just yet. Let me see if I can find it. But if Federico knows it off the top of his head, please expand. Yep.
Yeah. Good morning. I hope you can hear me. Did you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
I'm just checking if my audio was moving or not. I'm not sure what you mean, Connie, by spectrum sharing. Spectrum sharing is part of the normal framework of the ITU. So there are bands that are shared, bands that are not shared, etc. So what this resolution called was something similar to the resolution ITU R74, but as Chris was saying, this is a plenipotentiary resolution, which is higher up than the ITU R, and then resolution ITU R74 came, but they are basically talking about the sustainable use of space. and spectrum. So yeah, the idea of talking about these two resolutions is to highlight that the ITU is also looking into sustainability, and as part of all of this, there are parts that touch in dark and quiet skies.
Actually, at NSF was talking a lot about expanding on the idea of spectrum sharing in different ways that had not quite been considered before, so that it would be a situation that's amenable to astronomers as well. So I just thought that might be part of the sustainable use of spectrum part of that phrase there. I was just kind of curious. Thank you, though. Okay. I'm just reading someone's note in here, but I think there are no more questions right at this moment, unless we have any more hands that might go up for the next second. Okay. And I see Dimitri has a question. Go ahead, Dimitri.
Sorry, I couldn't find the virtual hand. I used my real hand, which is very out of fashion. Just a question for Meredith. Are you interested in data from 360 fisheye type of cameras that you'd find on top of observatories and that tend to record the sky throughout the night and potentially satellite movement as well? Is this data any valuable?
It certainly can be, yes. Thank you for the question. The challenge that SatHub is facing right now is basically extracting useful brightness information out of this kind of data deluge. Because while we're aware that there are many different sites that have all-sky cameras or meteor monitoring type services, we don't yet have a automated way to take a large volume of video data and extract the useful information that we might need out of it. If that is the kind of project that you're interested in, though, I'd love to chat more. Because that's the kind of connections that we need to make. So thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Yes, so questions can be asked of any of our speakers. I don't want to keep people too much longer, but we've had some interesting questions, and if you have any others, now's the time to ask. And as people are thinking, if anyone here has any final thoughts they would like to share, that would be wonderful. Okay. So I think, I don't know if Piero is still on. Piero, if you want to
Yes, I am.
mention anything about the future?
Well, I think that if there are no further questions, certainly you're welcome to contact us and the speaker by email if you have any thought about how to contribute. I think this meeting has been extremely successful. The participation is not large compared to the entire community, but we knew that because this first session was for the east side of the world, and we are expecting much more people in the afternoon. Well, we cover Europe and the US community. But in any case, the question that you asked were very interesting and show that indeed we need to improve the communication with you. And this is the first example of how we want to react, and there will be more. I think that the newsletter will cover the regular publication of the newsletter will certainly cover some of the questions you had about the interaction with the CPS. And so I'm quite pleased with this meeting, and I thank you all for participating and for your interest in this very challenging mission that we have in protecting the dark and quiet sky. Thank you again.
Thank you, everyone. Okay. I want to thank all our speakers too, whoever's left. It was very good. Thank you. Good night.
Bye then.
Federico, did you want to do tomorrow, the next number 2, or do you want me to do that? I'm quite happy to do it.
As you wish, Connie. Bye.
Connie, just for coordination for tomorrow morning. I'll certainly be there. Was the length okay? Do you want me to shorten it? I'll have to take out some slides. I had a hard time judging. That was
Yeah,
the length.
we were over about 15 minutes, so we have to kind of be more.
Yeah, that wasn't just me though. That was everyone combined, right?
No, I know. No, yeah.
Yeah.
I can ask politely, but this is gonna be, you're the only one. No, wait, let's see. I think you're the only one repeating tomorrow. So,
But I can take some slides out.
but you
Just
did a
got
good
a
job.
hard-
You did a really good job. So everybody did a really good job. So I don't know. It's hard to say.
Everyone had. Well, we're at the point where we take out good slides in order to make it shorter.
Yeah, I'm of a mind about the last slide that was there. Somebody I think had put that in. I don't know how that got in there. It's a slide that is becoming a member basically, and everybody who's coming is already a member. So it kind of baffled me. I didn't know if somebody.
Which one? No, sorry. I think it was me, Connie. My apologies, because I was looking at the slide deck. You're talking about the slide where you put the
number 9 or something. I can't remember.
yes,
I can go back.
that's not about becoming a member. It's about participating in the CPS and how you can participate after you become a member. That was the idea. So my apologies. I was supposed to say this.
It says joining the CPS as an individual starts as being an affiliate.
Yeah.
They're already members.
Well, but
So
they might not know how to interact. That was the whole idea of having a town hall, right? Is that we were hoping to get people that is not involved in the working groups already, which I don't know if that happened anyway, but that was the whole idea, right?
No, the working
Sorry,
groups, I
I'm not
understand.
sure who Linda P is, if I can ask. Can we ask
Hi,
Linda? Or can you do it, Connie, as host? Sorry about that, but this is just an internal discussion.
Yeah, I could try to get her to.
Maybe she's away from the computer.
Oh, we're still recording. We're
still recording.
Oh, geez. See, I tell you, I always forget to shut that off.
Yeah. All right, everyone seeing.
So,
thank you.
Yeah, but where's the recording stop here? I don't see it more. Oh, under more.
Bottom right, it says record.
No, mine does not.
Depending on which one you have.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, I guess we can ask Matt to trim it.
Yeah, she'll be able to.